China's rise is one of history's greatest turnarounds. For more than a century, it was torn apart, invaded by foreign powers, ruled by warlords, and humiliated on the world stage. Today, it is a superpower with enormous wealth, influence, and military strength. But how did a broken empire become one of the most powerful nations on Earth? Subscribe to The Lost Chapter, where forgotten history makes unforgettable stories. Britain's first Opium War in 1839 marked the beginning of China's humiliation. At the time, Britain was flooding China with opium, creating addiction on a massive scale and draining silver from the Chinese economy. When Chinese officials destroyed opium stockpiles and tried to halt the trade, Britain responded with overwhelming naval force. The Qing dynasty, weakened by corruption and outdated weapons, was no match for Britain's modern fleet. The Treaty of Nanjing forced China to cede Hong Kong, pay a huge indemnity, and grant Britain favorable trade rights. This opened the floodgates for more unequal treaties, leaving China's economy dependent on foreign powers and eroding its sovereignty. The once mighty Qing Empire was forced to watch as its ports, trade, and resources came under foreign control. This defeat shattered China's confidence and signaled to other powers that the empire was weak. France soon seized territory in the south. Germany took land in Shandong. Russia expanded its influence in the northeast. Even the United States demanded equal trading privileges. For many Chinese, it felt as if their once mighty nation was being carved up piece by piece. Internally, the country was falling apart. The Taiping Rebellion erupted in the 1850s, led by Hong Xiuquan, who claimed to be the younger brother of Jesus. His movement set up a rival government, enforcing radical social rules and promising equality for all. The war that followed killed over 20 million people, leaving vast regions in ruins. Later, the Boxer Rebellion of 1900 sought to drive out foreigners and missionaries. But when an 8-nation alliance, consisting of Japan, Russia, Britain, France, the United States, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary, invaded Beijing, China was humiliated again, forced to pay crushing fines while foreign troops occupied its capital. These nations, despite often competing with one another, temporarily united to protect their citizens, businesses, and political influence in China, fearing that a successful Boxer uprising would threaten their economic privileges. By 1912, the Qing dynasty collapsed after centuries of imperial rule. Years of foreign domination, failed reforms, and devastating rebellions had left the empire weak. In 1911, the Xinhai Revolution began with the Wuchang Uprising, as provinces declared independence from Qing control. Facing overwhelming pressure, the last emperor, Puyi, was forced to abdicate on February 12, 1912. For the first time in thousands of years, China had no emperor. But without an emperor, China did not find freedom. It found chaos. From 1916 to 1928, China entered the warlord era. The nation splintered into territories ruled by military strongmen with private armies. Rival warlords taxed peasants heavily, fought for railways and cities, and sometimes sold out to foreign powers for weapons. Ordinary people lived in fear, trapped between poverty, violence, and lawlessness. Amid this turmoil, two rival movements emerged, each promising to save China. The Nationalist Party, or KMT, was founded by Sun Yat-sen, a revolutionary who dreamed of a modern, democratic China. After Sun's death, Chiang Kai-shek rose to power, determined to unify the country through force. But in 1921, the Chinese Communist Party, or CPC, was born. Starting with just 13 members, it promised land reform for peasants, justice for workers, and freedom from foreign domination. For a brief period, the KMT and CPC worked together to defeat the warlords. But in 1927, Chiang turned on the communists in a violent purge that killed thousands. The Chinese Civil War had begun. The communists were losing, until a desperate gamble changed everything. In 1934, surrounded by nationalist forces, about 80,000 communist fighters began a 6,000-mile retreat known as the Long March. For nearly a year, they crossed mountains, swamps, and deserts under constant attack. Only about 8,000 survived. The marchers endured starvation, freezing mountain passes, and constant attacks from enemy forces. Many crossed raging rivers on makeshift bridges, carrying their wounded and supplies on their backs. Yet this ordeal forged a hardened army and elevated Mao Zedong to leadership. Mao realized that China's power lay with its peasants. While Chiang held cities, Mao steadily built loyalty in the countryside by promising land reform and justice. But as the two sides fought, a far greater enemy was preparing to strike. Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, creating a puppet state called Manchukuo. By 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion. The brutality shocked the world. The Nanjing massacre left hundreds of thousands dead, with mass executions, looting, and atrocities that horrified even other nations at war. To resist, the CPC and KMT formed the Second United Front. The nationalists fought conventional battles, while the communists waged guerrilla warfare, sabotaging railways, ambushing troops, and redistributing land in occupied areas. These efforts earned the CPC deep loyalty among rural communities. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the CPC had gained not just land, but legitimacy as defenders of the people. And with Japan gone, the Chinese Civil War reignited, this time with a very different outcome. The United States backed the KMT, hoping to stop communism, while the Soviet Union armed the CPC. But the communists had momentum. They controlled vast rural regions, had a disciplined army, and enjoyed widespread popular support. The KMT was plagued by corruption, inflation, and collapsing morale. By 1949, communist forces swept across China. Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan, and on October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong declared the founding of the People's Republic of China in Tiananmen Square. Mao quickly consolidated power. Land was seized from landlords, industries were nationalized, and opposition was crushed. In the late 1950s, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, an ambitious plan to rapidly industrialize. Villages built backyard furnaces to make steel, while farming was collectivized. Unrealistic policies and disastrous planning led to massive crop failures. Combined with poor management and food being diverted away from rural areas, this man-made disaster became one of the deadliest famines in history, killing millions. Factories multiplied at breathtaking speed, and exports exploded. Between 2011 and 2013, China used more cement than the United States did in the entire 20th century, a striking symbol of its construction boom. The country built vast high-speed rail networks, entire new cities, and mega-projects like the Three Gorges Dam, which became the largest hydroelectric power station in the world. Education became a pillar of progress. Literacy soared, universities expanded, and millions of students focused on science, technology, and engineering. This created a skilled workforce that powered industry and innovation. China also invested heavily in high-tech industries, developing 5G networks, artificial intelligence research, and its own semiconductor programs to reduce dependence on foreign technology. At the same time, China transformed its military. It developed nuclear weapons by 1964 and, in later decades, built one of the world's largest navies, launched aircraft carriers, and developed hypersonic missiles. Many reports also claim that China became a major player in space exploration, supposedly sending astronauts into orbit and landing probes on the moon. In 2013, China launched the Belt and Road Initiative, funding railways, ports, and highways across more than 140 countries. Supporters called it a new Silk Road. Critics argued it gave China political leverage by indebting poorer nations. Meanwhile, China became one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. debt, tying its economy closely to America's and increasing its influence in worldwide finance. In just a few decades, China had gone from isolated and poor to indispensable and powerful. China's rise was not just about winning a civil war. It built power through education, infrastructure, trade, finance, technology, and military growth, moving faster than any major nation in modern history. From humiliation to unification, from survival to dominance, China's story is one of struggle, strategy, and reinvention. What do you think was the real turning point? Mao's 1949 victory, Deng Xiaoping's reforms, or China's transformation into a global manufacturing powerhouse? Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to explore more buried truths from history. Forgotten history makes unforgettable stories. This is The Lost Chapter.